What did Rob Reiner say in his final phone call? Those words have sent shockwaves through Hollywood, left politicians whispering, and created a storm of questions that may never be fully answered. If anything happens to me, don't trust the silence around it. It sounds like something out of a thriller, a cryptic warning delivered in a calm, measured tone. But for Rob Reiner, the acclaimed filmmaker and outspoken activist, these were not lines from a script. They were real. And they were terrifying. Imagine this. A man whose life has been dedicated to telling stories. Stories that make us laugh, cry, and question the world around us. Sitting alone in his Los Angeles mansion, dialing a phone number, and delivering a message that would haunt anyone who heard it. He had faced Hollywood glitz, political battles, and the scrutiny of fame, but nothing could have prepared those closest to him for the weight of what he said that day. And yet, even as he spoke, there was a sense of ordinary calm. A normal day, a routine call, except it wasn't. Because within hours, everything would change. Rob Reiner and his wife, Michelle, would be found dead in their home, a revelation so shocking it seemed impossible. And their son, Nick, would be arrested, throwing the story into a labyrinth of intrigue, speculation, and tragedy. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. So who was Rob Reiner? To millions around the world, he was the creator of cinematic classics, a man whose humor and heart shaped generations. From the sharp satire of This Is Spinal Tap to the tender storytelling of The Princess Bride, Rob had an uncanny ability to capture the human experience in all its messy glory. And yet, behind the camera and away from the flashing lights of Hollywood premieres, he was a father, a husband, a man who cared deeply about the world he lived in. He was also a man who wasn't afraid to speak his mind, whether it was about politics, social justice, or corruption in the industry he helped define. And in his final moments, his words revealed a side of him that no one had fully anticipated, a side that was wary, cautious, almost prescient. Now, let's pause and consider the gravity of that final message. If anything happens to me, the phrase itself is chilling. It suggests that Rob sensed danger, that he was aware of forces that might threaten him or his family. Who or what was he referring to? Was it a subtle nod to Hollywood rivalries, a warning about the pressures of fame, or something far more personal, hidden behind the walls of his home? And what did he mean by "don't trust the silence around it"? It's a phrase that hints at deception, cover-ups, or secrets that could change the story of his life and death entirely. Even as we try to make sense of it, it raises more questions than answers. What did he know that the rest of the world did not? And why, despite all his experience and intelligence, could he not prevent the tragedy that followed? Hollywood responded almost immediately, though in whispers and hushed tones at first. Figures from every corner of the industry, from actors who had shared the screen with him to directors who had learned from him, expressed shock and grief. Social media lit up with tributes and theories, as fans tried to reconcile the man they knew with the cryptic warning he had left. Politicians, too, weighed in, highlighting his role not just as an entertainer, but as a public figure unafraid to speak truth to power. The surreal combination of celebrity, mystery, and family tragedy created a perfect storm, leaving the public both fascinated and horrified. But this story isn't just about Hollywood or politics. It's about family. The Reiner's son, Nick, suddenly found himself at the center of an investigation that the world would watch unfold in real time. What led to his arrest? Was it a culmination of family tension, personal struggles, or something far darker? And how did it connect to Rob's ominous final words? Every answer seems to open a dozen more questions, each more unsettling than the last. In a world obsessed with celebrity, tragedy, and scandal, the Reiner case is a reminder that the most shocking stories often hide in plain sight, behind the walls of a family home, in whispered phone calls, and in messages left for someone to decode after it's too late. Think for a moment about the ordinary nature of a phone call. Most of us use it for mundane tasks, checking in with loved ones, making arrangements, casual conversation. But in Rob's case, it became a conduit for a warning, a confession, and perhaps even a plea for understanding. Every word he spoke now takes on layers of meaning, each phrase dissected and replayed by investigators, journalists, and an anxious public. How often do we overlook the significance of words spoken in ordinary moments? How many warnings go unnoticed until it's too late? Rob's final call challenges us to consider these questions, to confront the uncomfortable truth that sometimes the most ordinary gestures carry extraordinary weight. As we step further into this story, we will explore not only the final hours of Rob Reiner and Michelle Reiner, but the complex web of Hollywood, politics, and family secrets that intersected in the most tragic way possible. We will examine the cryptic clues, the emotional spikes, and the hidden narratives that shaped their lives. We will hear from experts, sift through eyewitness accounts, and look at the layers of human behavior that make this story so compelling. And through it all, we will keep returning to that chilling final message. If anything happens to me, don't trust the silence around it. What did he mean? And will anyone ever truly know? Before we move on, consider this. Even the brightest, most accomplished individuals are vulnerable to forces beyond their control. Rob Reiner spent a lifetime creating worlds on screen, yet he could not predict the shadows that would gather around his own. The intertwining of fame, family, and fate often produces outcomes that are as shocking as they are tragic. And as we unravel the events of that fateful day, one thing becomes clear. Nothing is as simple as it seems, and every revelation will lead to another layer of mystery. What appeared to be a normal day in the life of a Hollywood legend was actually the prologue to a story that would grip the nation, exposing truths, lies, and secrets long hidden in silence. So, are you ready to uncover the truth behind Rob Reiner's final phone call? To understand the warning he left, the tragedy that followed, and the ripple effects that continue to shock Hollywood and beyond? The story ahead is not just a tale of celebrity and scandal. It's a human drama of love, loyalty, suspicion, and the haunting power of a message left too late. But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. What was Rob Reiner doing in the hours before his final phone call? It's a question that has gripped investigators, journalists, and fans alike. To understand the gravity of that moment, we need to go back to the day itself, a day that began like any other, yet ended in tragedy that nobody could have predicted. Rob, 78, had risen early in his Los Angeles home, surrounded by the luxury and comfort that decades of success could afford. Yet beneath the calm surface, there was a tension that only those closest to him might have sensed. Small gestures, subtle hesitations, a glance that lingered too long. These were clues, invisible to the casual observer, but now scrutinized in hindsight. He spent the morning in a routine of what many would consider ordinary. Breakfast, a walk around his property, a few phone calls checking in on friends and colleagues. But something was different. Those who spoke with him later described a tone in his voice that was unusually serious, almost guarded. Rob was not a man given to melodrama. His humor and charm usually colored every conversation. But now there was an edge, a sense of urgency. And then came the call. A call that would become the focal point of an investigation and ignite speculation across Hollywood and beyond. Who did he call? The number is not publicly confirmed, but sources suggest it was someone he trusted deeply. Someone he believed could carry a message, a warning, or perhaps even take action if needed. The moment he dialed, it wasn't just a phone call. It was a bridge between his intuition and the outside world. When he spoke, he did so with clarity and precision, carefully choosing each word. The phrase that would haunt everyone came at the end. If anything happens to me, don't trust the silence around it. But even before that, the conversation was filled with subtle warnings, questions, and hints of unease. He spoke in half-statements, sentences that began and then trailed off, almost as if testing the waters to see how the listener would react. What did he sense? What had he seen in the days leading up to this call that made him feel compelled to speak in riddles? Experts in communication and behavior have analyzed phone recordings and transcripts available from sources close to the family. They point to the careful tone, the deliberate pauses, and the unusual repetition of phrases as indicators that Rob anticipated potential danger. But what kind of danger? Was it physical, emotional, legal, or something else entirely? Every word he uttered is now being dissected for meaning, creating an aura of tension around what was once a simple act, reaching out to someone you trust. And yet, within hours, That act would be forever tied to the shocking deaths of Rob and Michelle Reiner, leaving a swirl of questions that has yet to settle. To imagine Rob making that call, picture a man who had spent decades in Hollywood, accustomed to telling stories, managing crises on movie sets, and navigating the pressures of fame. Even with all that experience, he felt the need to leave a warning. It is a chilling reminder that no matter how prepared we think we are, life can present situations that defy logic, where intuition becomes the only guide. And for Rob, that intuition was speaking through the words he left behind, a cryptic message that now echoes across headlines and social media posts alike. During the call, he reportedly spoke in measured tones, emphasizing key phrases and repeating warnings. "Don't trust the silence," he said. That phrase, seemingly simple, carries a complexity that investigators, psychologists, and journalists are still unpacking. It's a statement that implies awareness of secrecy, betrayal, or deliberate concealment. In Hollywood, secrets are common, but few are as personal and immediate as the ones that touch a family. And in the Reiner household, the intersection of fame, wealth, and private tension may have created the perfect storm for tragedy. What was he trying to warn against? Was it something external, or something within his own family? Every theory opens new doors, and none offer easy answers. As we consider the final phone call, it's also worth reflecting on the emotional weight behind it. Rob was not simply sending a message. He was trying to ensure that someone would understand, remember, and act if the worst were to happen. There is a profound vulnerability in that act. A recognition that life is unpredictable and that even the most careful planning cannot prevent catastrophe. The mixture of foresight and fear, hope and anxiety, permeates every word he spoke, making the call a haunting artifact of human emotion, captured in real time before tragedy struck. And then, hours later, the Reiners were found dead. The details are still emerging, but the shockwaves were immediate. Police arrived at the upmarket Los Angeles home to discover both Rob, 78, and Michelle, 68, deceased. The news broke across media outlets within minutes, and social media erupted with speculation, grief, and disbelief. People couldn't reconcile the public persona of Rob, the charismatic filmmaker, the outspoken activist, the beloved figure, with the grim reality of the investigation unfolding behind closed doors. And at the center of it all was that phone call, that chilling warning that now seems like a premonition. If anything happens to me, don't trust the silence around it. Even before the official police statement, friends and colleagues were piecing together the timeline, trying to understand the moments leading up to the tragedy. There were mentions of subtle disputes, unexplained absences, and a general tension in the household, but nothing that would have signaled the magnitude of what was coming. Yet, when the phone call is considered in context, everything takes on a new meaning. Each gesture, each conversation, each glance becomes a potential clue in a puzzle that investigators and journalists are racing to solve. It's a reminder that sometimes, the ordinary moments in life carry extraordinary significance, and what is dismissed as trivial may later prove to be pivotal. And then there's the human side, the emotional landscape that surrounds such a shocking event. For those who knew Rob personally, the final phone call is not just a piece of evidence, it's a haunting memory. Imagine hearing someone speak words that suggest imminent danger, only to find that hours later, they are gone. The grief is compounded by questions, by the frustration of not fully understanding what was meant, and by the chilling realization that even someone as experienced, intelligent, and cautious as Rob Reiner could not prevent the inevitable. It is a scenario that touches on universal fears, loss, uncertainty, and the haunting power of words left unheeded. Rob's final phone call also forces us to confront the nature of warning itself. How do we interpret messages that arrive too late, or that are encoded in language meant to protect yet obscure? How do we act on instincts and intuition when the stakes are life and death? In analyzing this call, psychologists suggest that the phrasing and delivery indicate a deep awareness of risk, an understanding of human behavior, and a strategic attempt to ensure his concerns would survive even if he did not. But even the most carefully constructed warning can only do so much when confronted with the unpredictable variables of life, fate, and human action. And so the story pivots from a simple phone call to a narrative that spans family, Hollywood, and politics. The call itself is the thread connecting everything. Rob's personal intuition, the tragic events that followed, the reactions from a grieving public, and the investigation that continues to unfold. It's a reminder that human stories are rarely linear. They twist, they conceal, they surprise, and they often leave us questioning what could have been done differently. The final moments of Rob Reiner are a testament to the delicate balance between foresight and fate, between communication and misinterpretation, and between life as we know it and the mysteries that lie just beyond our perception. What did he hope to accomplish with that call? Was it a simple alert to someone he trusted, a subtle attempt to create a safety net, or a desperate plea that went unheard? And how does it relate to the arrest of his son, Nick, who now sits at the center of this unfolding drama? Every answer seems to create new questions, new possibilities, and new angles for speculation. The narrative of the final phone call is not just about what was said. It's about what it implies, what it conceals, and what it sets into motion in the hours, days, and weeks that follow. As we move deeper into this story, we must keep returning to that simple yet haunting line. If anything happens to me, don't trust the silence around it. It is both a warning and a puzzle, a key to understanding the tragedy, and a doorway into a web of mystery that is still unraveling. And while investigators continue to work, while journalists continue to report, and while the public continues to speculate, one fact remains undeniable. This final phone call changed everything. It transformed an ordinary day into a saga of suspense, grief, and unanswered questions, a story that will continue to unfold in the months and years to come. What did Rob Reiner mean when he said, "If anything happens to me, don't trust the silence around it"? At first glance, it's an enigmatic phrase, almost poetic, and yet terrifying in its implications. On the surface, it reads like a warning, clear, urgent, and unervingly calm. But the deeper you dig, the more questions emerge. Why did he choose those words? Who was the me in his warning really referring to? Himself, his wife, or the safety of his family? And what exactly did he mean by "don't trust the silence"? Was it a hint at hidden betrayal, unseen threats, or secrets that others were desperate to keep buried? To decode this message, we need to examine the man behind the words. Rob Reiner was not someone who spoke carelessly. Every statement, every interview, every line of dialogue he delivered, both on and off the screen, was carefully considered. He had spent decades analyzing human behavior, telling stories that exposed the contradictions, hypocrisies, and vulnerabilities of those around him. So when Rob left a warning, it was deliberate. Every syllable carried weight. Psychologists analyzing the call note that his phrasing indicates foresight, a premonition of possible danger or conflict. But foresight does not mean clarity. In hindsight, it seems prophetic. At the moment, it was cryptic, layered, and designed to make someone listen carefully. Let's break it down. First, if anything happens to me, that's a conditional statement, implying the possibility of something going wrong. It's not a threat, nor is it casual conversation. It's a statement of potential risk. In human communication, conditional phrases often indicate awareness of vulnerabilities, a recognition that circumstances may spiral out of control. It's a preemptive caution, a way of preparing the listener for an event that may or may not occur. But why did Rob feel the need to leave such a warning? Was it intuition? Evidence? Or did he sense tension within his immediate surroundings that raised alarm bells only he could hear? Next comes the second part. Don't trust the silence around it. This is where the message takes on a truly unsettling dimension. Silence is often associated with calm, with peace, or with avoidance. But in this context, silence is dangerous. It is deceptive, hiding truths that others might wish to conceal. The phrasing suggests that Rob anticipated someone, or some group, would attempt to suppress information, prevent communication, or mislead those trying to understand what had happened. It's a statement that implies distrust, not of people necessarily, but of appearances. Things are not always what they seem. Information may be withheld. The truth may be buried. And in a world as complex as Hollywood or high-profile family life, the layers of secrecy can be impenetrable. Experts analyzing the message point out that this type of communication is often seen in cases involving high-stakes situations, whether in business, politics, or family dynamics. A person who feels threatened may use indirect warnings, cryptic phrases, and coded language to alert trusted allies while avoiding immediate detection. In Rob's case, this aligns with his life experience. He had navigated the treacherous waters of Hollywood for decades, dealing with rivalries, studio politics, and public scrutiny. He understood how power, secrecy, and influence can be used to manipulate truth. And perhaps, just perhaps, he sensed that the danger extended beyond mere accident or misfortune. It could involve intentional acts, concealed motives, or hidden forces that others would prefer remain silent. But why now? Why on this particular day? Investigators and journalists have speculated endlessly about what may have prompted Rob to speak in such a manner. Some suggest that it was a culmination of subtle tensions within his household or with his son, Nick, who would later become a central figure in the investigation. Others speculate it could have been related to external pressures, Hollywood dealings, political disagreements, or disputes that Rob had tried to resolve privately. The truth may never be fully known, but the phrasing itself indicates an acute awareness of timing. He knew the message mattered, and he delivered it with precision. Another element to consider is the emotional undertone. Rob did not shout, panic, or overdramatize. He spoke with calm authority, a quiet urgency that demands attention. There's a psychological principle here. Calm warnings are often more persuasive and memorable than frantic ones. The listener is drawn in, compelled to analyze every word, every pause, every inflection. Rob's tone reinforces the cryptic nature of the message, suggesting he wanted to ensure it would be remembered and understood, but without alarming those who might inadvertently amplify the situation. Let's consider the broader implications. In the context of family, silence often masks tension. Secrets grow in quiet corners, unspoken grievances fester, and misunderstandings can escalate into irreversible events. Rob's warning may have been a recognition of this dynamic. By highlighting the danger of trusting silence, he effectively gave a roadmap. Pay attention, question what seems obvious, probe beneath the surface. The message becomes a manual for vigilance, a guide for anyone who might find themselves navigating the same storm he foresaw. It's extraordinary in its simplicity, yet terrifying in its implications. The public has struggled to interpret the phrase, and for good reason. On social media, speculation ranges from the plausible to the sensational. Some suggest Rob was warning about family betrayal. Others think it hints at a broader conspiracy, perhaps related to Hollywood politics or even his activism. Every interpretation carries emotional weight because it touches on universal fears, loss, betrayal, and the unknowable. The beauty and horror of cryptic messages is that they invite multiple readings. They force listeners to confront ambiguity, and in ambiguity lies both insight and anxiety. Adding to the intrigue is Rob's history of storytelling. His films, from This Is Spinal Tap to The Princess Bride, often explore deception, hidden motives, and the contrast between appearance and reality. Could it be that his life mirrored his art? That the skills he honed in narrative construction, understanding human behavior, anticipating reactions, exposing contradictions, were now being applied in his own life? The final phone call, in that sense, is not just a warning. It's a story in miniature, a carefully crafted narrative designed to provoke action, reflection, and vigilance. And yet, despite the foresight, despite the clarity of the warning, tragedy struck. Hours after the call, Rob and Michelle were found dead. The cryptic message, once a private caution, became a public enigma. It is now a focal point for investigators, journalists, and conspiracy theorists alike. How much did the warning help? Was it ignored, misunderstood, or simply insufficient to prevent what happened? These are questions without easy answers, but they underscore the tension inherent in the message. It was a call to action, a plea for awareness, and a glimpse into a mind that perceived danger even in the ordinary moments of daily life. As investigators pore over phone records, witness statements, and timelines, they are returning repeatedly to the content of the message. They examine pauses, inflections, word choice, and context. Every detail is scrutinized. Why silence? Why not lies or secrets? Why conditional phrasing? These linguistic choices are critical because they reveal not only intent, but also the mindset of the speaker. Rob's use of subtlety reflects a strategic approach. He understood that those around him might misinterpret urgency, panic, or direct accusation. By encoding his warning, he ensured that only those who were alert and discerning would grasp the true significance. The phrase also raises profound ethical questions. What responsibility do we have to decode warnings, to listen when someone hints at danger? How often do we overlook signals in everyday life, only to regret it later? Rob's words resonate beyond this specific case, offering a universal reflection on communication, trust, and vigilance. They are a chilling reminder that intuition is powerful, that ordinary moments can harbor extraordinary significance, and that silence, whether from others or even from ourselves, can be deadly. Finally, the cryptic message sets the stage for everything that follows: the investigation, the public shock, the theories, and the relentless speculation. It is the seed from which the entire narrative grows. And as we peel back each layer of this story, examining family dynamics, Hollywood intrigue, and political connections, the warning continues to echo. Don't trust what seems quiet, what seems ordinary, what seems resolved. Look deeper, ask questions, question assumptions, and perhaps, in doing so, we honor the caution embedded in Rob's final words. Hollywood is no stranger to tragedy, but even by its own intense standards, the deaths of Rob and Michelle Reiner sent shockwaves that reverberated across the entertainment world like a seismic jolt. The morning the news broke, the industry awoke to disbelief, whispers, and an uneasy hush. Studios paused production schedules. Talk shows shifted their lineups. Social media erupted with tributes, speculation, and heartbreak. But beyond the surface-level mourning, there was a tension, a recognition that this was more than a typical celebrity passing. This was a story wrapped in mystery, marked by cryptic warnings, and haunted by the unresolved question: what really happened? The first reactions came from those who knew Rob best. Actors who had spent weeks or months on set with him recalled his warmth, his wit, and his uncanny ability to make everyone around him feel seen. Directors, producers, and writers remembered a man who could navigate the chaos of filmmaking with both precision and humor, who could turn a stressful situation on set into a lesson in creativity. And yet, despite all this public acclaim, the personal shock was profound. Colleagues spoke of Rob as a man who wore his heart on his sleeve, who believed in honesty, and who had a fierce loyalty to his family. The idea that he and Michelle could be found dead, in the safety of their own home, was almost impossible to process. Hollywood is, by nature, a place of appearances. Red carpets, premieres, interviews, and award ceremonies are all performances, carefully choreographed to project success, happiness, and glamour. But tragedy pierces that veneer. Rob's final phone call, with its cryptic warning about silence and hidden truths, reminded the industry that even those who seem most in control, most protected, are vulnerable. It was a sobering realization that fame and fortune do not insulate anyone from danger, heartbreak, or family turmoil. In the days following the announcement, Hollywood insiders spoke candidly, revealing that many had sensed tensions in Rob's personal life, though none could have predicted such a catastrophic outcome. Small signs, a withdrawn glance, a strained conversation, or a subtle change in routine, were now magnified in retrospect. Social media amplified the shock. Fans flooded Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok with tributes to Rob, sharing their favorite films, quotes, and moments that had inspired them. But alongside the grief were endless questions and theories. Some suggested foul play, others speculated about family dynamics or mental health struggles. Headlines framed the story with both reverence and urgency, highlighting not only Rob's accomplishments, but also the haunting context of his final words. Don't trust the silence. These words became a viral focal point, dissected in posts, videos, and comment threads, as the public tried to make sense of the mystery that had suddenly engulfed one of Hollywood's most beloved figures. Politicians and public figures also weighed in, acknowledging Rob's activism and his outspoken nature. He had spent decades championing causes, participating in campaigns, and lending his voice to issues of social justice. In a world where Hollywood and politics intersect in complex ways, his death was felt beyond the industry. Friends, colleagues, and fans alike commented on the uncanny intersection of his warning with the subsequent tragedy. How could a man so perceptive, so connected, leave behind a message that now seemed prophetic? How could words spoken calmly over the phone ripple into an event that would shake not just Hollywood, but the nation? The reaction of his peers in the entertainment industry was a mix of disbelief, mourning, and investigative curiosity. Directors who had collaborated with him spoke of his meticulous attention to detail, his insistence on honesty in storytelling, and his ability to sense tension before it became visible. Actors described him as both approachable and insightful, someone who could sense underlying emotions and motivations in ways that few others could. And yet, even those closest to him admitted that the finality of his death and the cryptic nature of his last message left them grasping for answers. How could a man who so expertly navigated the complexities of life, art, and politics leave a warning so chilling, yet so opaque? The media coverage added another layer of complexity. News outlets highlighted the arrest of Nick Reiner, Rob's son, casting a spotlight on family dynamics that had previously remained private. The combination of celebrity, mystery, and familial tension made the story irresistible to journalists and viewers alike. Every interview, every statement, every rumor was dissected and amplified. The public's fascination grew with each passing hour, as the narrative shifted from a tragic death to a sprawling saga involving secrecy, warning, and potential betrayal. Rob's final phone call became the lens through which the entire story was examined, interpreted, and sensationalized. Even within Hollywood, there was a quiet recognition that this was not merely a private tragedy. The cryptic warning suggested awareness of forces beyond normal comprehension. Forces that could influence, manipulate, or conceal the truth. Colleagues noted that Rob had often spoken candidly about power dynamics, hidden agendas, and the influence of networks within the entertainment industry. While some dismissed this as paranoia, others saw it as a logical extension of a man who had spent decades observing human behavior, decoding subtle cues, and understanding the intricate dance of influence and loyalty. His final words were not an overreaction. They were a calculated acknowledgement of the fragility of trust. The industry response also revealed a tension between public mourning and private scrutiny. While tributes flowed in, insiders were quietly analyzing the timeline, the phone call, and the interactions leading up to the tragedy. Who was present? Who had access? What subtle indicators had been overlooked? The contrast between public sentiment and private investigation underscores the unique pressures of Hollywood life, where appearances often mask complex realities. Rob's warning about silence resonated deeply because it captured the essence of this environment, that beneath the glamour and the laughter, there are unseen forces and hidden truths that can have devastating consequences. Moreover, Rob's death prompted reflection on the broader impact of silence in Hollywood. Many industry veterans spoke about the culture of withholding information, avoiding conflict, and preserving reputations at all costs. In this context, the message, "Don't trust the silence," becomes both literal and symbolic. It is a warning about the dangers of assuming everything is as it seems, about questioning narratives, and about recognizing that what is left unsaid can carry more weight than what is spoken aloud. It challenges us to consider how power, secrecy, and fear interact to shape events, and how even the most respected figures can become victims of circumstances beyond their control. The emotional resonance of Rob's warning is also amplified by the timing. The call was made hours before his and Michelle's deaths, a stark reminder of how swiftly life can change. What began as a routine conversation became an echo of premonition, a signal of urgency that, in hindsight, no one could ignore. For the public and Hollywood alike, the message serves as both a memorial and a mystery, a testament to Rob's insight, his foresight, and the enduring human struggle to understand what cannot be fully explained. And yet, despite the intense scrutiny, much remains unknown. Investigators are piecing together the final moments, but the message itself is an enigma. It suggests knowledge of danger, awareness of potential threats, and a desire to protect loved ones. It implies that silence, whether intentional, accidental, or imposed, can conceal truths with deadly consequences. And it reminds us that even those we admire most, those whose lives seem transparent and accessible through public achievements, may carry secrets, warnings, and unspoken truths that are only revealed in the most tragic of circumstances. The reactions from Hollywood also highlight the tension between grief and speculation. Colleagues struggle to honor Rob's legacy while grappling with the unsettling nature of the message he left behind. Fans wrestle with admiration, confusion, and fear, trying to reconcile the man they knew on screen with the mysteries of his private life. And investigators, both official and amateur, dig through every clue, timeline, and statement, searching for patterns, inconsistencies, and the hidden meaning behind the cryptic warning. It is a narrative that unfolds like a meticulously crafted thriller, with real lives at stake and questions that may never be fully answered. What does this mean for the broader understanding of Rob Reiner's life and work? It means that his story cannot be fully captured by films, interviews, or accolades alone. It means that even a life lived in public view, filled with creativity, intelligence, and humor, can harbor moments of vulnerability and prescient insight. It means that words spoken in calm, deliberate tones, words we might otherwise dismiss as enigmatic, can take on monumental significance when viewed through the lens of tragedy. And it means that the ripple effects of a single, cryptic phone call can extend far beyond its initial context, shaping narratives, investigations, and public consciousness in ways no one could predict. As the Hollywood community continues to grapple with the loss, one fact remains undeniable. The message Rob Reiner left behind will define how this story is remembered. Don't trust the silence around it. Is more than a cryptic warning. It is a lens, a key, and a haunting echo that will continue to resonate as new details emerge. It challenges everyone who encounters it to question assumptions, probe deeper, and remain vigilant in the face of uncertainty. And in doing so, it transforms a moment of private concern into a public enigma, a cautionary tale, and a chilling reminder of the fragility of human life, even amidst the glitz and glamour of Hollywood. But what nobody saw coming was how deeply this message would connect to events that were still unfolding. The arrest, the investigations, the revelations, and the shocking truths that would ripple far beyond the Reiner household. Hollywood was stunned, but the story had only just begun. Rob Reiner was never just a filmmaker. His career spanned decades of critically acclaimed movies, iconic performances, and groundbreaking storytelling. But beyond the glitz of Hollywood, he was a formidable political voice. From early in his career, Rob understood the intersection of culture, influence, and policy, and he used his platform to speak out on issues that mattered deeply to him. Whether it was advocating for civil rights, critiquing governmental policies, or championing social justice causes, Rob made it clear that art and activism could not be separated. And in the shadow of his sudden death, those political connections have become a crucial lens through which investigators and commentators are trying to interpret his final message. If anything happens to me, don't trust the silence around it. Consider the weight of Rob Reiner's political influence. Over the years, he openly endorsed candidates, participated in rallies, and lobbied for legislative change. He understood how narratives and media, particularly Hollywood, could shape public perception and policy. A director with his stature speaking on political issues was not just a celebrity opinion, it carried weight. It could mobilize communities, provoke debate, and sometimes ignite backlash from powerful figures who preferred to operate behind the scenes. In hindsight, some analysts suggest that Rob's awareness of political currents and hidden alliances may have contributed to the urgency in his final phone call. He had seen firsthand how influence could be wielded subtly, how power could manipulate silence, and how secrecy could mask dangerous intentions. The notion of silence takes on a political dimension when considering Rob's activism. Silence, in political terms, often signifies complicity, avoidance, or deliberate obfuscation. Those who choose not to speak, those who withhold information, or those who maintain appearances for strategic purposes can wield enormous power. Rob's warning about silence, therefore, may not have been just about family or Hollywood intrigue. It could have encompassed a broader understanding of hidden political machinations. In essence, he was alerting someone to the fact that appearances are often deceiving and that even respected institutions can conceal truths. It's a statement layered with historical awareness, reflecting decades of observing the interplay between culture, policy, and power. Rob's activism was also personal. He cared deeply about legacy and responsibility. He used his voice to amplify marginalized communities and challenge systemic injustices. Yet, activism comes at a cost. Publicly taking a stance on controversial issues invites scrutiny, criticism, and sometimes retaliation. For someone with the visibility of Rob Reiner, political engagement was not abstract. It was tangible and risky. Could his awareness of these dynamics have influenced his final warning? Perhaps he sensed that forces capable of silencing or manipulating narratives were present, even within circles he trusted. His words suggest both prescience and caution, a recognition that influence can protect, but also that it can be dangerous when combined with secrecy. In the immediate aftermath of Rob and Michelle's deaths, political figures began paying tribute, acknowledging his influence beyond entertainment. Statements came from elected officials, community leaders, and advocacy groups, all noting the impact of his voice on public discourse. But these acknowledgments were tinged with a sense of unease. Many recognized that Rob's engagement in politics had made him a visible and, at times, polarizing figure. His final phone call, which hinted at unseen dangers, has prompted some to speculate about whether his activism, or the networks it connected him to, could have intersected with personal or family dynamics in ways that contributed to the tragedy. This intersection of Hollywood influence and political engagement adds complexity to understanding the cryptic warning. It's one thing to leave a message about a potential danger in a personal setting. It's another to do so while fully aware of the ripple effects in both public and political spheres. Rob's career and activism made him a nexus of visibility, information, and scrutiny. Every phone call, every interview, every public appearance carried layers of significance. In this context, the caution embedded in his message becomes even more poignant. He understood that silence could be a tool, a shield, or a weapon, one that could distort truths and obscure reality. And by alerting someone to the peril inherent in silence, he demonstrated both foresight and strategic thinking. Let's also consider Rob's history of political storytelling through film. Many of his movies contain subtext about power, corruption, and societal oversight. From satirical elements in Spinal Tap, which lampooned systems of hierarchy and control, to more earnest explorations in A Few Good Men and The Princess Bride, Rob's work often examined human behavior in the face of authority, deception, and hidden motives. Could his artistic sensibilities have informed his understanding of real-world danger? The final phone call suggests a man deeply attuned to the nuances of human behavior, capable of reading motives, anticipating reactions, and understanding that those in positions of power may not always be transparent. It is a bridge between his craft and his lived experience, a haunting reminder that art often mirrors life in ways we fail to fully comprehend until it is too late. The response from political circles was immediate but cautious. Public statements lauded Rob's contributions to civic discourse and artistic innovation, yet there was an undercurrent of unease. What did he foresee? Could there have been knowledge of threats beyond the ordinary? While no official connection has been confirmed between his activism and the tragic events, investigators and journalists alike have noted the potential intersections. Rob's life was entwined with networks of influence, access, and visibility. His death, paired with a cryptic message about silence, invites questions that go beyond family or Hollywood intrigue and into realms where power, secrecy, and public exposure collide. The impact on public perception cannot be understated. For fans and citizens who admired Rob not only as an artist, but as a voice for justice, the revelation of his cryptic final words introduces an unsettling ambiguity. What truths might have been hidden? Who might have benefited from silence? How often do we overlook the warning signs in influential lives, dismissing intuition as paranoia or hyperawareness? Rob's statement forces us to confront these uncomfortable questions, highlighting the tension between what is visible and what is hidden in public life, and the responsibility each of us has to interpret and act on such warnings. Even beyond immediate political and social networks, the message resonates with the broader human experience. Silence, when it conceals danger, becomes a universal cautionary principle. In relationships, in workplaces, in civic engagement, the absence of information can be as consequential as the presence of falsehoods. Rob Reiner's final words, while anchored in his personal and professional context, extend beyond it, serving as both a warning and a lesson. Pay attention to what is left unsaid, question narratives, and remain vigilant when stakes are high. In this sense, the political dimension of his influence reinforces the broader resonance of his cryptic communication. Furthermore, the intersection of political engagement and tragedy invites reflection on the vulnerabilities of those who speak truth to power. Throughout history, figures who have challenged systems, exposed corruption, or championed marginalized voices have faced risks. Rob's awareness of these dynamics may have contributed to the urgency and phrasing of his warning. He understood that influence and visibility are double-edged swords. They protect, but they also attract scrutiny and sometimes danger. And in the final hours of his life, he distilled that understanding into a concise, chilling message designed to alert, caution, and prepare. Finally, the political context of Rob Reiner's life reminds us of the enduring power of voice. A single phone call, a single message, can carry immense weight when it emanates from someone who understands the mechanics of influence, human behavior, and societal structures. The warning about silence is not just about concealment. It is about the responsibility of interpretation, about recognizing patterns, and about acting with awareness in a complex world. Rob's life, his activism, and his final words converge into a powerful narrative that transcends celebrity, reaching into the domains of ethics, vigilance, and human foresight. And yet, the unanswered questions linger. Who was listening? Who understood the gravity of the warning? And what exactly did Rob foresee in the hours and days leading up to his death? The political ties, the influence networks, the intersections of power, all of it sets the stage for deeper revelations. Hollywood and politics are often intertwined, and Rob Reiner's life exemplified that intersection. His final phone call reminds us that even those who navigate public life with skill and insight cannot always control the consequences of secrecy, silence, and hidden forces. What comes next will reveal layers of complexity that go beyond personal tragedy, touching the very fabric of influence, accountability, and human behavior. Family. It's supposed to be a source of comfort, support, and love. Yet, in the Reiner household, as investigators and insiders began to piece together the final days of Rob and Michelle, it became clear that beneath the surface lay a web of tension, unspoken grievances, and hidden conflicts. Family, in this case, was not simply a source of strength. It was also a potential arena for friction, misunderstandings, and secrets that could explode with devastating consequences. Understanding these dynamics is essential to unpacking the cryptic message Rob left in his final phone call. If anything happens to me, don't trust the silence around it. The first point of scrutiny naturally falls on Nick Reiner, Rob and Michelle's son, who has been arrested in connection with the tragic deaths. Nick, like many children of high-profile figures, grew up in a world shaped by fame, expectations, and public scrutiny. For years, he witnessed the successes, pressures, and scrutiny of Hollywood life, and his own experiences were inevitably colored by the family environment. Observers now speculate about the dynamics between father and son, father and mother, and between all three members of the household. What tensions existed? What conflicts remained unresolved? And crucially, how did these private dynamics intersect with the final warning Rob delivered in that phone call? Family insiders suggest that there were long-standing pressures that the public never saw. Rob was a commanding figure, both in his career and in his home, someone who approached life with a mixture of discipline, humor, and intensity. Michelle, his wife, brought her own strengths, perspectives, and occasional challenges to the relationship, creating a household in which strong personalities had to navigate each other's boundaries. Nick, as the only child, was caught between these forces, trying to carve his own identity while living in the shadow of fame and expectation. While none of this, on its own, explains tragedy, It paints a picture of a complex family ecosystem in which tension, miscommunication, and unspoken resentments could simmer unseen. Psychologists who have studied family systems often note that silence within a household can be as dangerous as open conflict. Problems that are never voiced do not disappear. They accumulate, creating invisible pressures that affect behavior, decision-making, and emotional regulation. Rob's warning about silence, therefore, may have extended beyond Hollywood or politics. It could have been a reflection of his understanding of his own family. Perhaps he sensed undercurrents of tension that were not being addressed, dynamics that could escalate if left unchecked. The phrase, "don't trust the silence," could easily refer to this domestic context, a recognition that even in the place where love should prevail, unspoken conflicts can become dangerous. There are hints that Rob and Michelle were aware of these tensions, perhaps attempting to navigate them with care and strategy. Witnesses report that Rob was meticulous about maintaining communication lines, whether with family, colleagues, or friends. He encouraged openness and honesty, yet also understood that certain matters had to be approached delicately. This balancing act is familiar to anyone who has managed complex family relationships. How do you address conflict without triggering escalation? How do you safeguard emotional well-being while navigating strong personalities? Rob's final message suggests that he was acutely aware of these questions and that he sought to prepare someone to interpret signals he could no longer control. But what exactly were the hidden conflicts? Investigators have begun to uncover small but significant indicators, moments of disagreement, subtle shifts in behavior, and private tensions that were never visible publicly. These are the types of details that rarely make headlines, yet they can accumulate into profound emotional strain. Nick's interactions with his parents reportedly included arguments, misunderstandings, and episodes of frustration. The specific nature of these conflicts remains under investigation, but the pattern suggests a family grappling with the pressures of legacy, autonomy, and personal struggle. Rob's warning, in this context, could have been a preemptive attempt to alert someone that these tensions were real and potentially consequential. The psychological impact of living in a high-profile family cannot be overstated. Children of celebrities often face unique challenges. The pressure to succeed, the constant gaze of public scrutiny, and the expectation to uphold a family legacy. These factors can exacerbate ordinary family dynamics, turning minor disagreements into significant emotional flashpoints. In the Reiner household, it is conceivable that these pressures contributed to stress, miscommunication, and conflict. The final phone call, therefore, may have been Rob's way of signaling awareness of these hidden pressures. A recognition that the household dynamics were delicate, volatile, and in need of careful observation. Another layer of complexity involves the roles of trust and expectation within the family. Rob's warning emphasizes the danger of silence, which in a familial context could refer to unspoken resentment, concealed motives, or private struggles. Silence can be deceptive, suggesting peace while masking tension. By alerting someone to this risk, Rob may have been preparing them to notice subtle cues, to question assumptions, and to intervene if necessary. It is a rare form of parental foresight, the attempt to guide and protect, even when circumstances are beyond control. This perspective adds an emotional depth to the story, highlighting Rob's role not just as a father, but as a vigilant observer of his family's well-being. Moreover, there is the question of accountability and legacy. Rob, as a father and husband, was intimately aware of the stakes involved in family relationships. His message suggests a desire to safeguard not only his own safety, but also the integrity of his family, even after his passing. The emphasis on interpretation, "don't trust the silence," implies that understanding and context matter as much as the events themselves. This is a profound insight into human behavior. That actions, or lack thereof, can have consequences that extend far beyond immediate perception. Rob's foresight was not merely protective. It was strategic, aimed at ensuring that those left behind could navigate a complex web of emotion, loyalty, and obligation. The role of external influences cannot be ignored. In high-profile families, the pressure of public scrutiny and outside intervention can magnify internal tensions. Friends, colleagues, and acquaintances often become part of the dynamic, intentionally or inadvertently influencing decisions, behavior, and conflict resolution. In the Reiner household, it is likely that these external factors intersected with internal pressures, creating a volatile environment. Rob's warning about silence could thus serve a dual purpose, alerting his family to potential internal conflict while also emphasizing the importance of discerning outside influence. It is a nuanced understanding of risk that combines personal insight with situational awareness, a hallmark of someone who had spent decades navigating both public and private worlds. The emotional weight of this family context is amplified by the tragic outcome. When we reflect on Rob's warning, it is impossible not to consider the heartbreak of knowing that unresolved tension, unspoken conflict, and silence may have played a role in the final events. Families are complicated, and even the strongest bonds can be strained under pressure. Rob's words, therefore, resonate as both a caution and a lament, a recognition that life is fragile, relationships are complex, and sometimes foresight is the only tool we have to mitigate tragedy. Finally, understanding these hidden conflicts sheds light on the urgency and phrasing of Rob's message. It was not a casual comment, nor an idle statement. It was a strategic, emotionally aware communication designed to prepare someone for events beyond his control. It reflects a deep understanding of family dynamics, human behavior, and the interplay of trust, expectation, and conflict. And in the context of the larger tragedy, it becomes a haunting testament to the foresight and concern of a man who understood that sometimes, even within the safest spaces, danger can lurk in the quiet. But what exactly was the catalyst that transformed tension into tragedy? Was it a single moment, a series of misunderstandings, or an unforeseen chain of events? And how did these hidden conflicts intersect with the broader mysteries of Hollywood, political influence, and Rob's own foresight? The answers are still emerging, and what comes next will expose layers of family complexity that are as shocking as they are heartbreaking. The arrest of Nick Reiner, son of Rob and Michelle Reiner, sent shockwaves far beyond the Hollywood community. It turned a private tragedy into a national headline, raising questions about family, responsibility, and the dark complexities that can lurk behind closed doors. Suddenly, the story was no longer just about the deaths of two beloved figures. It became a story about accountability, suspicion, and the unthinkable possibility that someone from within the household could be implicated. Understanding the arrest, its context, and the subsequent fallout is crucial to piecing together the larger narrative of this tragic event. Nick Reiner's arrest, reported by law enforcement sources, was tied directly to the investigation into the deaths of his parents. The details released were limited, reflecting both the ongoing nature of the investigation and the sensitive nature of the allegations. However, the public learned that authorities had gathered sufficient evidence to justify taking him into custody. For the Reiner family, this was devastating. For the public, it was shocking, bordering on surreal. A son arrested in connection with the deaths of his parents, a scenario that challenges our understanding of familial bonds and trust. To understand the arrest, it is essential to examine the potential motives, context, and dynamics at play. While speculation abounded in the media and on social networks, investigators focused on factual evidence, timelines, eyewitness statements, and forensic analysis. Questions arose immediately. What interactions occurred in the hours leading up to the deaths? Were there financial or personal tensions? What role did prior family conflicts play in shaping events? Each of these questions points back to the cryptic message Rob left in his final phone call. Could his warning about silence have been prescient, highlighting a risk that only a parent with insight into family dynamics could perceive? Nick's history provides some context. He grew up in a high-profile household, the only child of two individuals deeply involved in Hollywood and political spheres. As such, he was under constant scrutiny, both public and private. Children in such environments often navigate pressures that are difficult to comprehend from the outside. Expectations to succeed, public judgment, and the constant balancing act between autonomy and loyalty. These pressures can exacerbate ordinary family tensions, creating friction that, when left unresolved, may escalate unpredictably. In Nick's case, investigators were keen to understand how these pressures might have contributed to the situation that led to his arrest. The arrest also sparked a wave of media speculation. News outlets framed the story with dramatic headlines, highlighting not only the tragedy, but also the shocking possibility of familial involvement. Social media erupted, with opinions ranging from disbelief to condemnation. Some questioned whether Nick had been unfairly implicated, while others speculated about deeper motives or hidden dynamics within the household. The media coverage, while informative and